A week before my grandson turned 18, he looked me dead in the eye and said the best gift I could give him was to hurry up and die so the family could split my money. He said it over cereal, didn't even put the spoon down. If you're watching this, stay till the end and drop the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. My name's Harrison Cooper. I'm 71, retired contractor. Spent 40 years pouring concrete and building houses in Tucson, Arizona, the same desert town I've lived in my whole life. My wife Diane's been gone 6 years now. Since she passed, I thought I still had a family worth showing up for. I was wrong. "Grandpa, real talk," Bobby said that Tuesday morning, spoon clinking against the bowl I bought him for Christmas 2 years back. "Best birthday present you could give me is if you just kicked it already. Then we split the money and I don't gotta wait around." 17 years old, said it like he was asking me to pass the milk. I was standing at the stove, flipping eggs, and my hand just froze over the pan. The eggs started burning and I didn't even smell it at first. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. "What did you just say to me, boy?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Don't make it weird, Grandpa. Everybody knows it. Mom and Dad talk about it all the time, what we're gonna do with the money when you're gone." This was the kid I coached in Little League, the kid I paid for private tutoring when his own parents said they couldn't afford it, the kid who used to fall asleep on my chest watching baseball, who told me at 9 years old he'd take care of me when I got old, just like I took care of him. Now he was calculating my death like it was a math problem standing between him and a truck he wanted. "You've had a good run, Grandpa," he said, standing up, dumping his bowl in the sink without rinsing it. "I'm just getting started. What are you even doing with all that money anyway? Sitting in this house all day?" He grabbed his keys and walked out, left me standing over a burnt eggs in a kitchen I built with my own hands 20 years ago. I didn't cry, not right then. I just stood there, staring at the door, and something in my chest went cold and hard, like it had turned to stone. See, I'd learned a habit after Diane died. I started carrying a little recorder in my shirt pocket. Doctor's visits, lawyer meetings, anything important. Being a widower teaches you to protect yourself because nobody else is going to for you. That recorder was in my pocket that morning. Every word Bobby said, I had it. Every single word. I turned off the stove, scraped the burnt eggs into the trash, and sat down at my kitchen table. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something meaner than that. I thought about my daughter, Sarah. I thought about her husband, Lucas. I thought about the $8,000 I sent them every single month to cover their mortgage, their cars, their credit cards, Bobby's allowance. Money I never had to give, money I gave because I thought that's what family did for family. I opened the drawer where I kept old bills and pulled out a small notebook, one I'd started keeping without even admitting to myself why. I wrote down what happened that morning, word for word, while it was still fresh. Then I got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the yard where Diane and I planted a mesquite tree the year we bought this house. It had grown tall enough to shade half the porch. Diane used to say the desert doesn't forgive weakness. Nothing survives out here that can't protect itself. I stood there, thinking maybe it was time I remembered that. 2 days later, I drove over to Sarah and Lucas's place to drop off some papers for their refinancing. Papers I was helping with because they said they couldn't afford a lawyer. I used the spare key they gave me for emergencies, let myself in through the side door. That's when I heard voices coming from the kitchen, low, careful, the kind of voices people use when they don't want to be overheard. I heard my daughter's voice first, then Lucas, then Bobby. And what they were talking about wasn't a birthday party. It was me. If you were in my shoes, hearing your own family plotting behind a closed door, what would you have done? Type where you're watching from, and let's keep going.
I should have knocked. Should have called out and let them know I was in the house. Instead, I stood frozen in that hallway, back against the wall, listening to my own family plan my downfall like it was a business deal. "We can't just sit around waiting for him to pass naturally," Lucas was saying. His voice had that same flat tone he used closing contracts at work. "He could live another 20 years. By then, there won't be anything left, especially if he needs a care facility." Him. He said him, at least, but he was calculating my lifespan like it was a spreadsheet. That's how little I existed to them as a person. Do you know what those places cost? Sarah added. We'd lose everything waiting on that. So what do we do? Bobby asked, and I heard something in his voice I hadn't heard at breakfast. Eagerness, like he was leaning forward in his seat. We push him toward assisted living, Lucas said, sooner rather than later. Once he's in, we go for power of attorney. Say he's not competent to manage his own money anymore. I pressed my mouth over to keep from making a sound. How do we prove that? Sarah asked. Dad's sharp as a tack. Everyone knows it. Not everyone, Lucas said, and I could hear him smiling. I've been keeping a file. Little things. Times he seemed confused, forgot a date. His old doctor retired last year, remember? New guy doesn't know his history. I've been going to appointments with him, mentioning we're worried about his memory. My blood went cold right there in that hallway. Lucas had been in the room for 2 of my checkups this year. I thought he was being a good son-in-law. He was building a file against me. How much money are we even talking about? Like real numbers? The house alone is worth $400,000. Then his investments, his savings, what's left from Diane's insurance money. We're looking at close to $2.5 million. $2.5 million. I nearly laughed out loud right there against that wall. The real number was closer to $600,000. The rest, every bit of Diane's insurance money, every dime of my retirement had gone into this family. Bobby's private school, this house's down payment, their cars, their vacations, their emergencies that never seemed to end. I never told them how much I'd already given away. I didn't want them feeling guilty about it. Turns out, I should have wanted them feeling something. That's enough for the truck, plus tuition, plus whatever's left over, Bobby said, and I heard the grin in his voice. Don't forget we have expenses too, Sarah said. Your father and I are drowning over here. We need that money as much as you do. There's enough for everybody, Lucas said, long as we get control of it before he does something stupid, gives it to charity, decides to travel, or worse, finds some woman at the senior center and remarries. Sarah actually laughed at that. My daughter laughed? So what's the timeline? Bobby pressed. After your birthday, Lucas said. We start mentioning that living alone isn't safe for a man his age. Bring up a few times he seemed forgetful. Get him used to the idea he needs more help than he thinks. And if he says no? Bobby asked. He won't have a say once we've got the paperwork. I backed away from that wall slow and quiet as I could manage, my heart slamming so hard I thought they'd hear it through the drywall. I let myself out the side door, got in my truck, and sat in their driveway with my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. They didn't want me dead. Dead was inconvenient. They wanted me alive and helpless and controllable. A paycheck with a pulse. I thought about Bobby's words over cereal 3 days earlier. Now I understood. My death would have been too fast. They needed me warehoused somewhere cheap, milked slow, until there was nothing left. I drove home through streets I'd lived on for 40 years, past the hardware store I used to buy lumber from, past the church where we held Diane's funeral. And somewhere on that drive, the grief that had been sitting in my chest since breakfast 3 days ago turned into something else, something with edges. Back home, I went straight to my bedroom closet, reached behind my winter coats, and pulled down an old strongbox I hadn't opened in 5 years. Inside was a second will, one I'd had notarized right after Diane died, back when a lawyer friend told me every widower ought to have a backup plan just in case. I sat on the edge of my bed holding that envelope, and for the first time since Bobby said those words over cereal, I felt something close to calm. Because now I understood exactly what I was dealing with, and come next Friday, Bobby's 18th birthday, they were all going to understand exactly what they were dealing with too.
Next morning, I woke up calmer than I'd been in days. Funny thing about the truth, once you know it, you stop flinching at shadows. I wasn't guessing anymore. I'd heard it with my own ears, and I had it on tape. But hearing something once wasn't enough for me. I wanted to see how fast it would spread, and how each one of them would react when they thought there was less money on the table. So I called Sarah that Friday morning, like I did most weeks. "Hey, Dad, how you feeling today?" Her voice always had that same sugary tone when she wanted to check my bank account without asking straight out. "Actually, I'm a little worried," I said, settling into my recliner with my coffee. "Had a meeting with my financial guy yesterday. Says I've been too generous, might need to cut back." Wasn't true, hadn't met with anybody, but I wanted to watch the dominoes fall. "Cut back how much?" Sarah asked, and just like that, all the sweetness drained right out of her voice. "He thinks I should bring the monthly support down from 8,000 to maybe 2. 2,000? She said. "Dad, that won't even cover the mortgage." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What's wrong?" Straight to the number. "I know, sweetheart, but I've got to think about my own future. What if I need care someday?" "You don't need to hoard money for some nursing home," she snapped. "If something happens, we'll take care of you." Hoard, like keeping enough to survive my own old age, was some kind of sin. "I might have to sell the house, too. Downsize, free up some cash." "Sell the house?" Her voice cracked. "Dad, you can't. That house has too many memories. Mom's garden is out there." Funny how the memories mattered the second the house's value came into it. I hung up and started a stopwatch on my phone just to see how long it'd take the news to travel back to me. 2 hours and 40 minutes, that's how long. Lucas called first, using his smooth closing a deal voice. "Harrison, Sarah mentioned you're having some money concerns. I'd be glad to take a look at your accounts. Sometimes these advisors try to scare guys your age into bad decisions." "That's kind of you," I said, "but I think I'll handle it myself." "Well, if you're worried about care costs down the road, there's ways to protect your assets. Move some of it early to family so it doesn't count against you for certain programs." Protect the assets, meaning hide my own money from me so I'd qualify for government help while they kept their inheritance clean. An hour later, Bobby called, my grandson, who a week earlier told me my death would be a good birthday present, was suddenly worried sick about my finances. "Mom said you're having money trouble. Does that mean the truck's off?" There it was, no concern in his voice at all, just the one question that mattered to him. "Might have to be something smaller, maybe a laptop for community college." "A laptop?" He sounded personally insulted. "Grandpa, I need a truck. I can't show up to school in that old Ford you gave me last year." The Ford I bought him 2 years ago for 18 grand, now trash to him because it didn't impress his friends. "There's kids your age who'd be grateful for any truck at all." "Yeah, well, I'm not other kids. I'm your grandson. You're supposed to want good things for me." I hung up, not saying much else. Sat in my chair a long while after that, running through 3 phone calls in my head. Not one of them asked me if I was okay. Not one offered to help me through hard times. Every single one jumped straight to controlling my money for my own good. That evening, I called my real financial advisor, a man named Nicholas, who'd handled my accounts for over a decade and knew the truth about my finances better than my own family did. "Nicholas, if I wanted to change my beneficiaries completely, how fast could that happen?" There was a pause on the line. "Everything all right, Harrison?" "Getting clearer by the day," I said. "I need you to set up a meeting, soon as you can." "Monday morning work?" "Monday's good." After I hung up, I walked through my house looking at it different than I had in years. This house Sarah was so worried about me selling, built with my own hands. Every wall, every cabinet, every inch of it mine and Diane's. It had turned into a shrine to a family that didn't exist anymore. I opened my notebook and wrote it all down. The 3 phone calls, what each one of them said, what none of them asked. Then I closed it and looked out at the mesquite tree in the yard,
its branches thick and steady, even after everything the desert had thrown at it over the years. Bobby's birthday dinner was 1 week away. By then, I planned to have every single piece in place.
By Monday, I'd met with Nicholas and laid it all out for him. The recordings, the notebook, the timeline. By Wednesday, I'd sat down with a lawyer named Aaron, who'd handled estate cases for 30 years. And by Thursday, I'd seen a doctor who put it in writing, plain and simple. Sound mind, sharp memory, fully competent. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building a case nobody could argue with. Friday came, Bobby's 18th birthday, the night they expected a check for a truck, and instead we're going to learn exactly what happens when you wish death on the man who's been feeding your family for years. I invited them all over for dinner. Sarah showed up with grocery store carnations, the kind that run about $10. Lucas carried in a cake from the bakery downtown like it was some grand gesture. Bobby wore a new shirt I was pretty sure I'd paid for through his allowance. "Happy birthday, son," I said, hugging him at the door. He felt stiff in my arms, like a man waiting for a transaction to start. We ate at the same table I'd built with my own hands 20 years back. Pot roast, Bobby's favorite. Small talk that felt like static. Everybody performing a part in a play we all knew was fake. Finally, over cake, Sarah asked the question they'd been circling all night. "So, Dad, how'd things go with your advisor? Any better news?" "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "things are a lot clearer now." Lucas leaned in. "Clearer how?" I looked around that table at the three of them. My daughter, her husband, my grandson. The people who spent a week plotting how to strip me of my money and my freedom while calling it love. "I've made some changes," I said. "Moved most of my assets into a protected trust, set up a legal guardian service in case I'm ever unable to manage things myself, made sure nobody can ever take advantage of me." The table went dead silent. "That seems extreme, Harrison," Lucas said, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "Does it?" I reached into my shirt pocket and set the little recorder right next to the birthday cake. "Let's talk about what's extreme." Sarah's face went pale as flour. "Dad, what is that?" "This," I said, "is a recording of a conversation you three had at your kitchen table last week about getting power of attorney, about telling doctors I'm losing my mind, about which cheap facility you'd stick me in while you spent my money." Bobby's mouth fell open. I pressed play. Lucas's voice came through clear as day, right there over the birthday cake. "Once he's in, we go for power of attorney, say he's not competent to manage his own money anymore." I let it run 30 seconds before I hit stop. 27 minutes. That's how long you three spent planning how to destroy my life. Real detailed, real thorough, and every second of it recorded. "We were just worried about you," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "Worried," I repeated. "Is that what you call it when your son tells his grandfather his death would make a good birthday gift?" I fast-forwarded to another part. Bobby's own voice filled the kitchen. "That's enough for the truck, plus tuition, plus whatever's left." Bobby went white as the tablecloth. "Grandpa, I didn't mean—" "You meant it, same as you meant it over breakfast that morning." I set a manila envelope down next to the recorder. "This has copies of everything. The recordings, my notes going back months, a signed letter from my doctor saying I'm of completely sound mind, and copies of my new will." Lucas found his voice first, though it came out shaky. "What kind of will?" "One that doesn't leave a dime to any of you. It goes to the Children's Hospital, the VA, and the local food bank. People who actually need it instead of people who tried to steal it." Bobby shot up from his chair so fast it scraped the floor. "You can't do that. That money's supposed to be ours." "It's mine," I said, calm as I'd ever been in my life. "I earned every penny of it with my own 2 hands. I'll leave it to whoever I choose." "We're your family," Sarah said, tears running now. "Family doesn't plan to have you locked away," I said. "Family doesn't wish for your death over a bowl of cereal." I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. The desert night air rushed in, cool and sharp. "I think it's time you all left.
Take the cake with you. I won't be needing it." They filed out one by one, stunned, silent. Sarah paused at the doorway, mascara running down her face. "This isn't how families are supposed to work, Dad." "You're right, Sarah. They're supposed to protect each other, not sell each other off for parts." I shut the door and leaned against it, my whole body finally letting go of a tension I'd been carrying for a week straight. It was done. But as their tail lights pulled out of my driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Just 3 words: "This isn't over."
That text sat on my phone for 2 days before anything came of it. Saturday and Sunday passed quiet. No calls, no cars pulling into my driveway. First peaceful weekend I'd had in years. I drank my coffee slow, read the paper without anybody watching over my shoulder, worked in the yard without somebody telling me I was too old for it. Monday morning, the storm hit. Doorbell rang at 8 sharp. Through the window, I saw a woman in a gray blazer holding a clipboard, and behind her, parked crooked in my driveway, Sarah's car. "Mr. Cooper, I'm Nicole Ferris, Adult Protective Services. Your family's reported some concerns about your welfare. Mind if we come in and talk?" I opened the door wide. "Come on in, all of you." We sat in my living room, Nicole in the armchair across from me, Sarah and Lucas stiff on the couch, Bobby standing near the door like he was ready to bolt. "They're saying you've become confused," Nicole said gently, "erratic with money, suspicious of family trying to help." "I'm going to save you some time," I said. "Would you like to hear what my family said about me before I made any changes?" I set the recorder on the coffee table between us. Nicole's pen stopped moving. I played it. All of it this time. Lucas's plan for power of attorney, Sarah asking how long before it'd be official, Bobby doing the math on my death. By the end, Nicole's face had gone from professional neutral to something closer to disgust. "Mr. Cooper, how long have you known about this?" "Since the day before I changed my will." She turns to my family. "Is this recording accurate?" "It's out of context," Lucas said fast. "Every family has these conversations." "Do they?" Nicole asked. "Most families plan out timelines for declaring a relative incompetent?" Nobody answered that. Nicole spent another 20 minutes asking me questions. My daily routine, my medications, my finances. I answered every one clear and steady, my notebook open on my lap in case I needed a date. When she finished, she stood up. "Mr. Cooper, I see no signs of confusion or impaired judgment here. You're a competent man who protected himself from people trying to exploit him." She looked hard at Sarah and Lucas. "I could file a report on this." "No need," I said. "I just want them gone from my life." They left without another word. Bobby paused at the door, looked back at me like a kid who'd finally realized the ride was over. "This isn't over, old man." "Watch me," I said, and shut the door. 7 months later, I was standing in a different kitchen in a smaller house in a quiet retirement community on the other side of Tucson called Desert Vista. Sold the old place 3 weeks after that dinner. Wasn't about the money. Every wall in that house had memories of people who never really loved me for who I was. My new neighbor, Amy, let herself in with the spare key I'd given her, same as she did every Tuesday morning. "Morning, Harrison," she said, grabbing the second mug I always had ready. Amy was 68, a retired school teacher, sharp as a tack, and the first real friend I'd made since Diane passed. "You see the paper?" she asked, sliding it across the table. Small item, bottom of the local section. Bobby Brown, 18, arrested, DUI, vehicle impounded. I read it once and felt nothing. No urge to call the lawyer, no guilt about not bailing him out, just nothing. "You all right?" Amy asked. "I'm good," I meant. It took time to get here. First month after that dinner, I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call Sarah or setting the table for 4 out of habit. 71 years of programmed instinct don't disappear overnight. But the silence stopped feeling empty. It started feeling like peace. Sarah had sent 1 letter back in the spring, full of apologies wrapped around careful hints about their financial troubles.
I threw it in the trash without reading past the first paragraph twice. Lucas tried showing up at my old address once, only to find out I'd sold it. My lawyer sent him a letter about harassment after that. Never heard from him again. Bobby never called at all. In a strange way, that was the most honest thing he'd ever done. He never knew me as a person, only as a paycheck. Without that, I stopped existing to him. Fair enough. You ever regret it? Amy asked me that morning. Same question she'd asked a dozen times before. Cutting them off completely? I thought about it, same as I always did. I regret it was necessary, I said. I regret the people I loved most saw me as a resource instead of a man, but I don't regret protecting myself, not for 1 second. That afternoon, I got a call from the Children's Hospital thanking me for the donation, telling me they'd used part of it to build a new playroom for kids going through chemo. They sent photos, kids laughing in a room that didn't exist before I decided where my money actually would go. That evening, I sat in my chair, the one that used to be in the old house, moved piece by piece here, and I thought about Bobby's words over cereal that morning. Best birthday gift you could give me is if you just died already. In a way, he'd been right. The man who lived to serve everybody else, who mistook money for love, who accepted scraps of affection in return for constant giving, that man was gone. What was left standing in his place was someone stronger, someone who finally understood that the first person you owe protection to is yourself. I raised my coffee mug to the empty kitchen. Happy birthday to me, I said. And somewhere, I believe Diane was smiling.